Hi everybody, Chris Pies here with another classroom with PCA Sim Racing. This week we are going to tackle, instead of a track walk, an idea, a concept, and we're going to tackle what is commonly referred to as racing and multi-class racing. Multi-class racing is a concept or a type of race where there are multiple races going on at once with multiple classes. So typical in iRacing, you have the IMSA series, which is probably the most popular multi-class series in the official races, which is or mirrors the IMSA sports car championship that we have in real life. So with GTPs being the top class, LMP2s and GT3s being the second and third classes respectively. What this means is that all the GTPs and prototypes are racing each other. So GTPs are racing GTPs, LMP2s are racing LMP2s, and then the sports cars are racing themselves as the GT3 class. Importantly, all these cars are going to come into proximity of each other because all three different cars run different lap times. So the GT3s will be constantly passed by the faster class cars, and the faster class cars will have to get around the GT3s, which will hamper and hurt lap times, and not an ideal lap time because they'll have to find safe ways to get around the slower traffic. Multi-class racing is exciting because it forces drivers to know how to drive offline and maintain speed, and it also puts cars in close proximity of each other that wouldn't ordinarily be there. So that's why we like multi-class racing. In the league, in the PCA Sim Racing, we are firmly within our team racing series, which has multi-class in it. And we have up and coming very soon the 24-hour at Le Mans, which will have 3 different classes in it for a period of 24 hours, which will be very exciting. So this is a very timely topic. So what I have and the idea for this classroom is I'm going to talk about multi-classes and in the general concept of what you need to think about when you're racing multi-class and passing slower class cars or getting passed as a slower class car. And then I'm going to use some examples of racing that I've done over the past couple of weeks in multi-class scenarios to demonstrate, some examples of what went well, what didn't go well, how can we improve, and what can we do to learn from those scenarios. So that's kind of the general idea, and we'll jump in. So if any of you guys have any questions that are on Discord, just feel free to pipe up. Otherwise, I am going to share my screen, and we're going to hop in straight into our first scenario. I have disappeared, so let me fix that. There it is. Hello. Okay, perfect. Okay, so before we get into that, let me talk about an acronym that I created. I call it FACE, like your face, for multi-class and takeaways. So this is my idea of an acronym to help or make it easier to remember kind of the key takeaways of multi-class racing. The first one, the F in FACE, is foresight. You need to be able to think up ahead, multiple corners in advance. So for instance, if you are the faster class car and you're coming up on a slower class car, you see them down or you see them on your relative, they're 3 seconds out. Where are you going to catch them? Where do you want to catch them? You can do things as the faster class car to help manipulate where you catch these slower cars. If you are one of those folks that have been racing in multi-class before and you come across or you say, man, I keep catching the slower class cars at bad spots on the track, it slows me down too much. Ask why. Why is that happening? The big thing that can possibly happen is that you're just driving as fast as you possibly can and you're not really having any foresight into where you're going to catch these cars. Sometimes it may be beneficial to lift and coast, go a little bit slower before you catch the car to ensure that you catch the slower class car in a spot that's going to minimize your lost time through the pass. So for instance, I would much rather pass a slower car on a straightaway where both cars are 100% throttle, you will lose no time, than catch the slower car in a very complex set of corners where you can't realistically make a clean pass or a safe pass, to which you will lose seconds on that lap time. So if you can delay the pass by being a little slower to catch that car, to catch them in a proper spot, yes, you lose some lap time when you're delaying your speed to catch them, but overall, you end up in a better spot because you didn't catch them in a bad spot. So that's foresight. Think in advance, think what's going to happen before it happens. Number 2, the A in face, is announce, which is announce your intentions to your other fellow drivers on track. This applies both to the cars that are slower and the cars that are faster. In multi-class racing, the slower car tends to be able to dictate where it wants to get past. So for instance, if it's coming into a turn and it's going to be really close on whether or not a faster class car can get by them before a turn in, the slower class car can dictate, I don't want you to pass here, by positioning their car in more of a defensive measure to make it less enticing for the faster class car to pass. So what I mean is, say, going into a turn, which is a 90-degree turn to the right, where normally to set up for that turn, you would be all the way track left on entry, and then you would turn in and take a late apex. The car that's faster, that's coming up on the slower class car, may view this wide entry as an invitation for them to dive and send it in and try to make a pass on entry into the corner. If you're the slower car, it would behoove you to maybe take the turn and the turn-in point a little shallower, so the car that's coming up on you gets the idea of, this car doesn't want me to pass them on entry, I'll set up a pass on exit. So that's the announce to your other drivers or the fellow drivers of where you want the passes to occur. And it also goes along the way of, if you are the faster driver, announce your intentions, and slower driver. So if you are the faster driver and you're coming up on a corner like that same turn 1 we just described, if you pop your car out and show your nose, so come in a little bit offset from your opponent to show that you're going to try to take this on entry, that is a clear signal to say you want to pass on the entry. If you stay behind the car all the way into the turn-in point and then you pop out, you're not adequately announcing your intent to try to pass on the entry into the corner, and instead you're actually announcing, I'm going to wait. Same thing for the slower car. If you decide that you want somebody to pass on the racing line and you are going to move offline, you don't want to do it as soon as the faster car reaches you, because their idea, or what you've signaled to them, is that you're going to stay online and you want the faster car to pass offline. If you see a faster car coming up on you, you're online, and then you move offline to be the nice person and let them go, what can ultimately end up happening is you move over when the faster car was intending to try to pass, and you move in their way as they try to pass, and there's a collision as a result. If you're going to move offline, first off, try not to, but if you are going to move offline, do it early, do it very, very clearly before the faster car catches you. The next takeaway is the C in face, which is confidence. You have to be confident in the move that you make. I remember there was an instance where I had a friend of mine who got in a wreck coming out of a parking lot, taking a unprotected left across a busy highway. And the reaction she made was, or the reason the incident occurred was because they weren't confident that they had the right to go. So when they decided they were going to go, halfway through the turn, they kind of panicked a little bit and decided they weren't going to turn, and they ultimately led to them getting in an accident. If you're going to make a move, like leaving a parking lot or make a pass, you've made that decision, you're going to make that move. Be confident in your decision. Don't second guess yourself. If you second guess yourself, bad things tend to happen. If you make the decision to do it and you do it with confidence and something bad still happens, hey, mistakes happen. It happens all the time. But you're less likely to have a bad accident if you're at least confident, even if it's the wrong choice. Just be confident. And then finally, ego. Don't have an ego. There's a big, I think, problem, or at least that I've seen from racing official races, where people think that if they don't pass a slower car when they catch the slower car, that means the slower car somehow won. Or if you're in the slower car and a faster car is coming and trying to pass you in a brake zone, you've got to show them that you're a better driver, even though you're not even racing them, and try to outbrake them going into the corner that they're trying to pass you in. Park the ego at the door. There's no room for it in multi-class racing, frankly. and think of the bigger picture in terms of we want to minimize the time loss in these passing instances. So don't have an ego. So that's where I came up with face. Everybody can remember your face. Use your face when you drive multi-class. So I know it's a little corny, but here we go. Are there any questions about that, or at least those concepts, before I start showing some examples?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, cool. Yes, drive with your face, and you will survive. All right, so let's look at some examples. So the first set of examples comes from Laguna Seca. This is, I think it was 2 weeks ago, maybe last week. GT4 was at Laguna Seca. It is GT4 and LMP3. I'm driving an LMP3 going through traffic in GT4, and this provides a great set of just examples to drive with because of the relatively short track that Laguna is. The speed differential between these two cars is quite large, and because the track is so short, there's lots of passing opportunities and a lot of really awkward corners, so patience is rewarded. So for instance, this first example is right here. What you see, this McLaren that's over here on the right had a little bit of an off, is just now kind of getting back up to speed, so they're off on the inside. They're getting caught by their competitors, so we've got two wide in front of me going into this corner. What do you do if you're the LMP3 coming up to this? Well, we want to pass on straightaways. That's the easiest place to pass with the minimal time loss. But at the same time, we can't just sit behind cars, because there'll become a point where waiting and being patient is not, it hurts our lap time more than it would gain. So at the ultimately it is a race. We do need to minimize the time lost here. But we need to pick a place where it's safe to pass and also allows us to have as fast a lap time as possible. So what I'm looking for going through this turn, I think this is turn 4, is I'm looking to pass these cars coming out of turn 4 on the exit when I'm under full throttle. So what I will do is I'm using that foresight, the F in face, to see what I need to do as a driver to ensure that I catch these cars on the exit of the turn rather than in the middle of the turn. If I drive all the way up to their bumper and they've already turned in, I have to sit there and wait on them to when they move out of the way, and then I can continue on. I will be accelerating from a lower speed. If I scrub a little speed on entry, ensure that they get through the corner, and ensure that I have enough room that when I go back to throttle, I am hammering the throttle, I will be passing them at 10, 15 miles an hour faster than I would if I drove all the way up to their rear bumper. So that's the idea here, is I'm coming up to them and looking to see what's going on in front of me, predicting it, knowing I'm going to need to go to the inside to pass to get a good move. Now, the lesson that can be learned here is from this McLaren, who's already off speed, who's on the inside of this corner, as you can see. What does he do here? I think he sees me in his rearview mirror and is trying to get out of the way. He doesn't know the BMW exists there, and he literally drives over in front of the BMW, who's accelerating, and the BMW has to do a bit of a oh my goodness, slow down to avoid hitting the McLaren. So you've got to keep an idea of what's around you. If you are a car that's off pace, that's rejoining, don't get freaked out by traffic. Don't pull in front of somebody else. Sometimes it's best just to hold your line, even if it's in the middle, and let people go around you if necessary. So be predictable. All right, but the main takeaway and what I really wanted to show was coming up, which is in turn 6, this next corner. This Mercedes that's in front of me, not the one I'm passing right now, is taking the corner normally. Now, normally between turn 6 and turn 7, there's plenty of room to get by as a faster car, so long as you catch them in like the first third of the little straightaway here. After that, it gets really tight really quickly. Normally, all the slower cars will just ride the racing line, which is all the way on track right. But this Mercedes does something different. Coming out, he decides that he wants to move straight over to the left and give me the racing line. I'm not totally sure. I'm not expecting that. But to his credit, he does it early enough that I can predict it and see it happening. So I'm still tracking out from my corner. I can't go any further left at this point because my car is on full edge. But he's moved his car and demonstrated that he's going to move his car over to the left to let me go. I now know that he will not try to go too wide through the next corner. I'm free to go at this point. He announced early that he is going to move over and let me go. So that is the A in face. That's great. And we make a clean pass going into turn 6. All right, so now if we go to turn 7, or lap 7, turn 4. Okay, so this is going to be the A in the C of face. This is going to be announced early and have the confidence in what your actions are that you're going to be able to do it. Okay, so coming out of the turn 2 or turn 3 at Laguna Seca, we've got a BMW who's making his run, and I am going to catch this BMW well before his actual turn-in point. I could lift and coast and wait behind him and wait for after the corner, but I am going to lose probably a second on the lap if I do that. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to announce my intention of I plan on passing you on the entry into this corner, and then I'm going to maintain the confidence to know that I am going to do it. So I'm taking control of the situation. So what do? I pop out early. I don't stay right behind him and then pop out at the last second. I pop out early to announce I'm going to try to pass you here by showing my car all the way. You can also facilitate that by flashing your lights to tell the car in front, I'm going to try to pass you here. At this point, he knows I'm on his inside. He would normally start turning in probably about the 2 board. So there's still a little bit of a gap and I haven't quite overlapped him, but he knows that I've popped out early. I've given him a second or 2 notice that this is going to happen, and he's just going to have to, live with it. I haven't given him a choice. By not giving him a choice and maintaining my confidence in it, he does what only thing he can do. He can brake a little bit early, take a later turn in, and try to tuck in right behind me. And the result is we tuck in nice and easy. I can take a shallower line because I have more grip and aero on my car than him. And the pass is complete on entry with no problems whatsoever. He doesn't lose any time. I don't lose any time. And we move on our merry way. So that is the A and C in face. All right. Corkscrew. Corkscrew's coming up at Laguna Seca after turn 6. Going with the idea of thinking about foresight, the F in face, I see all these GT4 cars in front of me that I have to pass, and I'm trying to think, how is this going to work coming up to a very complicated part of the track? When you see this many cars outside of class that you're going to have to pass, you need to think about what happens if you pass that first car. Where are you going to be? In what value do you get out of that in this situation? So if I pass this first car, I can't really pass the second car either. So I am not going to be able to go any faster if I pass this first car, like on the entry of the corkscrew. It's a high risk move. I'm going to have to slow down anyway for the McLaren that's in front of me. There's no way I'm going to be able to get by both of them in one go. And even if I were able to, there's another car in front of the McLaren, only maybe 3 more cars up, that I'm going to have to slow down for anyway. So what this tells me is find a safe place and to get a good run on cars, pick them off one at a time, and don't try to force an issue because you're not going to go anywhere even if you force an issue. The other thing that I don't like about this and what I see in front of me is I've got a car way off on the right that's signaling pass on the left, but then another car. So I don't know if this Porsche in front of me is moving over to the right to try to make a move on the McLaren on entry, or if they're moving over to the right because they want me to pass. His actions say that he's moving over to the right to maybe try to make a pass on the McLaren because he's not lifting, or he's not helping facilitate the pass at all. So if we move forward in slow-mo, we can see what's going on. He starts to move over a little bit more. I get to a situation where I'm starting to get boxed in. I can't go forward, so I can't clear the Porsche because I'll run into the McLaren. And I can't really do anything else from where I'm at because of the Porsche on my right. So I am stuck in this left lane, entering probably the most dangerous part in the track. So what do I decide to do? I pull out of it. My lizard brain kicks in and says, "This is not where you want to be. There's too many variables going on in front of me. I'm just going to get out of it, brake, overslow the car, let this kind of transition out, and then figure my way out as it develops." And that's what ends up happening. So the Porsche threshold brakes. He keeps it all the way on the right. I've way slowed down the car to the point where I am trying to give the Porsche room. I'm glad I did, because he cut off and I wouldn't have had enough room to make a move through there. And I focus on coming out of the corkscrew, making a good move to get around the Porsche on the inside where an easy pass can be made. I then transition and take that momentum onto the outside with the idea of passing that McLaren after the next corner on the inside, where it's nice and easy. I can lose as little time as possible. And I've cleared the first two cars, and I can focus up ahead to try to get in a spot to clear the next cars. So that's an example of your lizard brain kicking in and saying, I should not be here. Just get out of it. Get out of the throttle. You don't have to run over anybody. You can always just lift or even tap the brake, so long as no one's behind you, and get yourself out of a dangerous situation like that. All right, any questions so far before I go to the next one? No? Okay, cool. All right, so the next one is going to be lap 8, which is this lap, and we're going to go into turn 2. Ah, yeah, it's this one right here. Okay, so we've got a Porsche coming, or Porsche on our left, this number 14 car in front of us. And if you're the slower class car, you want to not, just like me, not lose very much time. But at the same time, you don't want the faster class car messing with your line and messing with how you take corners, because that's going to potentially slow you down in your race. So you want to help facilitate the pass, make it safe, clear it so you can focus on driving your race and driving your line. In this situation, I clearly have enough pace to be able to get alongside the Porsche before the brake zone of turn 2, which is up here ahead. The Porsche is chasing the BMW, so they have their own race going on. I've got my own race. I've got enough pace where I can get by them before the turn-in point, outbrake them, do everything I need to do to clear them. My pace is not going to be at all impacted on this corner. If I'm in the Porsche in the slower class car, what I should be thinking at this point is lifting, coasting, or even braking a little bit early to help facilitate the faster class car to get by me so I can take the corner normally. What does the Porsche do in this case? The Porsche threshold brakes. So they're not having the foresight, F and face, and instead they are going all the way to their brake marker, which is the floorboard, effectively, and slamming and doing threshold braking. What does that do? That results in me staying alongside him all the way through the brake zone, and him having to go wide around the first corner to try to hold his momentum because he can't drive down into me. The result is both of us are slow because I can't track out. He can't go into apex. We're both slow through these series of corners because of his threshold braking. If he were to just lift and coast, not only does he save a little bit of fuel, but he minimizes his time loss to maybe 1/10 of a second, if that. And if done properly, you probably wouldn't lose any time at all. So if we show what happens, he threshold brakes at 4. We're right alongside each other. He can't turn down into me, so he has to stay way out to the outside. I can't let my car drift out to get a good run through the second apex, so he has to wait and overslow his car for the second corner. So that's the example of not using foresight and trying to use maybe ego to try to outbrake a faster car, which makes no sense of why you would want to do that. All right, if we go to turn 5 up ahead, right here, lizard brain time again. Okay, so looking up ahead as I come through turn 5, I am going to see this Porsche that's way up here out in the grass, or the gravel, fighting the car, doing everything they can to try to get control of it, and they got to come back on track. As they do that, you've got two cars on the outside that are trying to pass, or on the inside now that are trying to pass. I don't want to be in this situation whatsoever, and I want them to try to figure it out through the very fast left-hander that is turn 6 right here. So what I do is I just lift way early, conserve some fuel, and time it so when I get back on throttle going through 6, I have momentum. I'm going faster than them, which will enable me to pass relatively easy up the hill, not one, but 2 cars. Find a gap between 2 cars so I can make the third and final pass coming out of the corkscrew through the fast left-hander down the hill. So that's an example of seeing what's up ahead in front of you, having the foresight to see what's going to happen. That slow car is going to cause these left 2 cars to have to make a move. I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to make it 3 wide through a very, very difficult corner. And the result is a clean pass in on a straightaway, losing no time through the traffic of 3 cars. All right, last corner on this lap with this pink car. So we're coming up to the last corner. I've announced and showed that I want to be on the right because I've got a good run and I'm a faster car. So I am going to try to pass all the way over on the right. The pink car sees that is happening and they actually leave room for that to happen. But I do know the GT4's threshold brake at the 2 board just like we do in the LMP3 in this case. So I expect the pink car to maybe lift and coast, maybe brake a little bit early, allow me to clear, and then they either tuck in behind me and take a nice wide line into the most important corner on the track because it leads onto the longest straightaway, or to maybe take it shallower but let me clear first and then they can take the apex. What ends up happening though is boom, they brake right at the 2 board. They are threshold braking offline on the inside into a really tight corner. Not only are they not like over here to where maybe it makes a little bit more sense, they are so far on the inside that they're going to be incredibly slow at the apex point. So what does that make me have to do? That makes me have to offset the corner because I don't know where, all I have is car left. I have to offset the corner by half a track to try to get a good run coming out. And it ultimately ends up hurting my turn. It ultimately ends up hurting the pink car's turn as well because, well, he can't cleanly go through the corner like he normally would. His entry is severely sacrificed and he can't track out like he normally would. So the result is we're both slow. So don't threshold brake. Park your ego at the door. The E in face. All right, lap 15. 12, 13, 14, 15. All right, lap 15, turn 5. Okay, so this is a good one, and we talked about it briefly before about announcing the A in face, your intentions and what you want cars to do. So coming up to this BMW in front of me, the number 15 car, it's going to be tight on whether or not I can make a pass going into turn 5 on the entry. I could potentially do it if he lets me and gives me some help, but it's going to be close. So I'm looking at this car in front of me and seeing what their intentions, where they want their car. I've moved my car over, so I've announced at this point I intend to pass, and I have the confidence to do it. I'm planning on sending it in there. And with the BMW's movements all the way over the right tires on the rumble strip, at this point, I would think that any reasonable person would think, okay, the BMW is giving you a huge gap. It looks super inviting. They're going to let you go ahead and dive it in there, and then they'll tuck in and follow right behind you. That doesn't happen. He turns in right at his turn-in point when I'm almost alongside his back bumper and cuts all the way across my front bumper and takes the apex like he normally would. Now, this may be his racing line, and that's totally fine. But he did not really announce that this was going to happen at all. So if I go to show the... Let's see here. If I go to the cockpit, show what it looks like with full speed, let's say. So coming on in. Waiting, seeing he's all the way on the right. I'm ready to go, and then all of a sudden, boom, across. A lot of incidents happen when that happens, where the faster car thinks that they can make it, the slower car is driving their line, and we hear that all the time. Just drive your line, slow traffic. It's the responsibility of the faster car to get around you cleanly. Well, yes, that is a broad brush of a rule, but as that instance demonstrates, if I'm not ready for him to make that move and I just drive it like I normally thought I was going to drive it, I'm going to say, wait a second, I had the corner. I was going in, I was alongside you, because impact would have happened on his left rear quarter panel if it would have happened. He would have said, well, I'm just driving my line. It's a responsibility of the faster car to get around safely. And what ultimately ends up happening is both drivers think that they were in the right. They think that they were wronged by the other driver, and that's where people get upset. In reality, you can just prevent this by, if you're the BMW, instead of driving all the way over to the rumbles, put the car where I am currently. So offset it by a car width, drive on the right 2/3 of the track. It all of a sudden makes this turn incredibly, or makes this entry less inviting for the faster car, because they're going to have to be all the way on track left to try to dive it in there. So it's going to lead, you're signaling to the faster car, I want you to wait until after this corner. If that would have happened, I would have lifted early, waited for them and followed them through the corner, and then set up a run coming out of the corner. The slower car can dictate to some extent when and how they're going to get past by positioning their car in a way that shows a signal like that. All right. And then finally, the final turn. Going all the way through. We got a bunch of traffic, yada, 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 fun stuff. Okay, so here's a fun one. Coming up to the last corner, similar to that pink car that we showed before, where there was that threshold braking. This is a situation that you kind of never want to see, because it's a little bit awkward. So as the faster car, I've got 3 slower cars all around me. They're all kind of fighting each other. There's a pretty big gap between the BMW, well, not big, but bigger gap between the BMW and the Porsche in front that I could easily slot in between, take the final corner, and then pop out and pass easily the front 2 cars on the straightaway, which is my intention. I'm already halfway past the BMW on this situation, and we're still a good 200 meters from the brake zone. So I'm thinking, perfect, I can do a little bit of lift to make sure I don't run into the car in front of me, get a good entry set up and everything. I'm already past the BMW at this point. What ends up happening, so there's no doubt that I am past the BMW. What ends up happening is the BMW threshold brakes on the inside and tries to re-dive me into the corner, resulting in me having to go wide, him having to go in at a significantly compromised angle, and we are both slow through the corner as opposed to us being fast. It doesn't help anyone to try, if you're the slower car, to try to either race or try to demonstrate either through ego or whatever reason that you are faster and try to repass the faster class car going into a corner like that. Pull in behind them, lift a little bit early, make sure your car is nice and balanced, and focus on getting a good run behind them. It doesn't always work. Sometimes there are instances where faster class cars are slower in corners maybe than you are. But in this situation, you have to read the context. I'm currently car number 1 in P1. I've demonstrated that I am the fastest prototype on track right now. It's very unlikely that him in position 22 is going to be faster than I am going through any corner on this track. So there's no reason for him to try to refight for position. And it's not even for position, but refight a faster class car into a corner for whatever reason. So it's just an example of us losing both times. All right, are there any questions? That was the kind of the little demonstration I had planned and queued up to show some examples of face. Drive with your face. And you'll have more success in dealing with some of these passes and some of these situations that you find yourself having.
Love it. I do have a question for you.
Yes.
So as much as I always say, lift with your neck. Yeah, face is perfect for this. But take us through. I don't know if you have anything to replay or whatever, but some of the situations we see in some of the summer tour, because we have four different classes of cars with four different classes of drivers. We've got some slower drivers in faster cars, faster drivers in slower cars, all sorts of different scenarios. And a lot of it is exactly what you're talking about. Step 2 and 3, announce and your confidence are huge keys. So stay in somebody's mirror if you're not going to take that corner. Pop out if you're going to. But if you pop out and then don't, it makes the other car take the wide line, even though you're now following on the wide line. You're both slowing down. My biggest thing that I do see is I see trains of GT3s and GTPs coming by slower cars. One takes the inside, one takes the outside. The slower car is now in the middle, getting dive bombed on both sides. What's the etiquette of the faster cars if they're in a train? Is it safer for them to stay within the same group and line?
So that's a very good question, and you segued into a really, really good reason for me to pull out the second replay that I had. I was going to leave it at that, but I'm going to show the other one because it's an incredibly important thing that you're mentioning in terms of how, as a slower class car, if you start getting basically run up on by prototypes, what do you do, and in reality, we like to think it won't happen. We like to think the prototypes are going to be calm, cool, and collected, and cause no problems whatsoever. But reality shows that's not the case. We're all out there racing. The red mist descends, and especially if we're racing other cars, that can cause you have multiple races. So you could have two different races over the same 400 meters of track, and so people are trying to jostle for position, get around people, use people as picks on other drivers. But that's some of the joys of multi-class racing. So what do you do in those types of scenarios? If you are the slower car and this is happening to you and you find yourself three wide, you just hold your line. You do everything you can, you hold your line. But you have to have like situational awareness of is who's behind me, who's to my left, who's to my right, how many cars are coming. I've been in situations where I've had a pack of like 8 LMP cars come sailing up on me in a really not good spot and just start diving and driving around me like I didn't exist. How do I survive that? And the only way you can survive that is just to drive your line. And if they hit you, it's their fault. You don't want to be hit, but you can't just disappear either. The worst thing you can do is be unpredictable. So try to move offline to get out of everybody's way. They're not expecting that. They're expecting you to drive online, and their car has more grip, so they can take tighter and crazier lines to avoid you. So what I'm bringing up and what I'm queuing up on this replay is cars have gotten faster. It's now IMSA at Mugello from a couple weeks ago. I'm driving a GTP car, not a Porsche, unfortunately, but the Caddy, because I don't know, it sounds good. And I wanted to show. I'm looking at my notes from earlier. I think it would probably be around turn 6 or lap 6. So let's go to lap 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Yeah. All right. So I've got this friend of mine, and I say friend in that I am racing against them in front of me, this black car. And we are starting our progress through traffic. So exactly kind of the scenario that you were talking about, Jim, in terms of what do you do? How do you handle going through traffic and multiple GTP cars? So here we come, coming through the S's and Mugello. We're coming up to the final corner. And here comes the first scenario. 2 GT3 cars on the final corner at Mugello. So important corner coming off. Ideally, what I am thinking of here, and when I cross any GT3 car, is I want to pass on the inside coming out of the corner, because the GT3s are going to track all the way. They're going to use all of the track. They have to. And they're going to end up all the way track right on the exit. So I'm going to take a very late apex, my car is also going to want to do the same thing, but I want to basically displace that exit by a car width, which is where I'm predicting their car will be, so I can have a clean run. The black car is not doing that. The black car is thinking in his mind, I just want to get away from me, the white car. And so he's basically sending it in there without a lot of foresight. So he's not using his face. He's violating the F in face. And he is going around the outside. So the GT3 cars are doing exactly what they normally would do. They're driving their line. It's a late apex, come off of it. They're going to end up all the way on track right. The black car has already committed to trying to pass them on the outside, right at the track out point, meaning that his car and the GT3 cars are going to start coming and converging on a single point. What's going to end up happening is the GT3 cars are going to either have to get out of the throttle and sacrifice their exit to avoid sideswiping him, or they're going to stay in it because they're have a race themselves, and they're going to stay in it to try to keep their speed up onto this big long straightaway, and it's going to end up pushing the GTP out into the gravel or off track effectively. So they're risking the car contact because of it. So as I see this, he gets by one, and this is what we talked about on the Laguna Seca replay, is when you see two cars like this, two GT3 cars in really close proximity, it's very difficult to get by both of them at the same time. It just makes the GT3 car really long, right? So even if he clears the first one, he's going to have the same problem with the second car. So I see this happening. I start saying, I'm going to have to take this on a tight line to get around them. What ultimately ends up happening is the Porsche sacrifices his exit, so he doesn't go all the way to track out because of that black car. And then the Ferrari at the last second sees what's going on and makes a pretty abrupt move to the left to try to make room for the GTP up ahead. Meanwhile, again, at the very beginning, I knew I wanted to go left on the exit because that's where the GT3 cars won't be. So I had already committed to be over here. You've got the GTP on the outside just kind of saying, screw you guys, I'm going to drive this line I've committed out there. I'm all the way on the inside, kind of on the safe line to make these passes. And this poor Ferrari is on the inside trying to figure out, where do I go? What do I do? So that, I think, Jim, is exactly what you're asking. What do you do if you're the slower class car and you've got these guys fighting around you? You just have to drive your line and do what you can to try to stay out of people's way. But when I say that, it's not moving out of people's way. It's just going the path of least resistance. He couldn't be on the outside, so he had to move his car over to the left. Then I'm coming through. He was cleared by the GTP on the right, so he could now fade over to the right to allow room for me. But if we watch that kind of this lap in this, or go ahead, Jim.
No, you've got it absolutely right. It's as the slower class car, you got to have your head on a swivel and watch both, because some may go on the right with the other one on the left. If you're the faster car, I know that was a better example you win back than the driver in front, who I think sort of probably took the wrong line. They could have slowed down and you both would have gone inside, probably a little more effectively. But if you're running third or fourth in the GTP, do you tend to follow the line of the driver in front of you to go around, or do you create your own and sort of offset a car that's not expecting you in the opposite direction?
Absolutely. If you're in the faster class and you're coming up against slower class cars, like kind of what's going on now, and I'm just going to let this lap play because look at all the GT3s and I'm fighting this black car, right? So we're trying to figure out how we're going to get through traffic. The big thing I will say about the traffic like this is, if it's one car at a time and you can get really tight to the car in front of you that you're trying to race, that front car will punch a hole through the traffic. And if you're close enough, you can use that as a guide and follow them through the traffic. It's a very good strategy. It's also pretty clear for GT3 cars because they're not going to be coming right behind the GTP cars very often because they're offline and the car can't move that quickly. So if you're able to get lock and step really close behind your opponent, they can punch a hole. But based on that previous turn, the last turn on the previous lap, that shows me that this black car is kind of like taking risky moves. I see that happening, and I don't necessarily want to follow him through that. I also see all these GT3 cars, like there's like 8 of them that we're going to have to drive through. So even if he makes a risky move, like I don't know if this would necessarily be risky, but he dove this green car into this little left right. He can't go anywhere. Like even though he got past, and I talked about this at Laguna, even though he passed the green car, where's he going to go? He can't now pass this Ferrari anywhere because the Ferrari's going to have to turn right. And even if he is able to get by the Ferrari, he's not going to be able to get by the Porsche as well. So in my mind, I'm going to stay patient because he's not going anywhere. He's not going to all of a sudden run away from me in the next 2 corners because he's got traffic. So I end up staying back here, being patient behind the Lambo, and focus on getting by the Lambo in a good spot, which would be the next corner. So right here. As I said before, the black car could not get around the other traffic. He has to be patient as well. So the gap is not increasing. So I set up the Lambo to get a good run coming out of the corner and make a good clean pass going through there. Same thing into the fast downhill S's. He was able to get past these next 2 cars. Great for him. But he's got a Ferrari in front of him. He's not going to go anywhere. Just like I'm going to have to take a number and follow these GT3 cars through the lower S's as well. So it's kind of that ebb and flow of you're not running away from me because you've got other cars in front of you. So I'm going to have to do the same. Now, he makes in my mind, a pretty risky move around the outside here on the way down because it depends on the Ferrari knowing he's there and not tracking out. And so he's able to kind of get around a little bit of a cork at that point. And I've still now got 2 more cars to go through. But he's still got other traffic that he has to go through as well. So the gap, again, is not going to be increasing at the rate that he would be if he was in absolute clean air. So it's kind of be patient, wait, pick your battles. This is also lap 6 out of like a 30-lap race. So this is not the place to like really be forcing issues. And I even wait here on the way through here. Now he's cleared the final GT3 for a little bit, so he's going to... Oh, no, he hasn't. There's 2 more. So, again, he's still going to end up being held up just as I'm being held up. So nobody's going to get away from each other. So it's that kind of foresight that you have to have when you race to say, all right, just because I'm not able to stick right on this bumper doesn't mean it's all lost for me. And because it's so early, I'm just waiting to pick good places to make clean passes rather than just sending it wherever I catch traffic. And that's kind of the big takeaway here is be patient in traffic. You don't want to wreck anybody out. You don't want to get wrecked out yourself. But at the same time, you don't want to be just traveling behind somebody in a slower class because that's not helping your race. I wanted to... there was one spot here where... Okay, lap 19. You mentioned making a hole, and I actually wrote it in my notes. Making a hole. So lap 19. Notice I'm still back on the black car. He never got away from me through this entire race. Okay, so lap 19. Coming into the downhill S's. His tires are falling off. I'm able to keep up with him much better in clean air. But here's an example of the black car making a hole, but I'm close enough to take advantage of it. So we're going through here,
cool, man.
Coming down.
Cool.
He makes a relatively risky move around the outside, but look, he creates... Oh, maybe he didn't. I thought that was lap 19. Okay, never mind.
Oh, you're on 20 now.
No,
I'm on... Okay,
Yep.
there we go. It switched over. So now it's 19. Okay, so that was my next one. So anyway, again, similar situation. Rolling through. I'm right on his rear. Same exact move, right? Same exact move, but this car recognizes it and he makes a hole, and I'm able to follow him right through in a place that normally you wouldn't be able to follow. So that's an example of using the car in front of you kind of as a blocker and creating space if you're close enough and being ready to pounce on a situation as it arises. However, and that was this next one on turn 20, again on my notes, sometimes it just doesn't work out, and sometimes you have to be patient. So it's the exact same scenario.
Cool.
Stop talking. Exact same scenario, but there is a little bit more of a gap. It takes a wide line, but this time the Porsche tracks all the way out, turns in. That hole that was there is no longer there, and I can't drive through the Porsche in front of me. And getting impatient because now he is released, the black car is released, he's going to take off, and I am going to have to sit at least through one more corner behind this Porsche and lose time to him. It's very easy to get flustered and say, this is killing me, this is killing me, I have to wait. Meanwhile, he's going to drive away. But in reality is, I caught him, I know I can still catch him, and that's my focus rather than driving somebody off the road and forcing something to happen that shouldn't be happening. So yeah. If we go to lap 21, I make the pass. I'm actually going to go to his car's view. So you saw how he was driving with me pressuring him. This time it's the other way around. He's now second, and I'm getting ahead of him. But look what I do. I'm patient. I wait because I know he can't drive through me. I'm waiting. He's trying to force something, but this traffic is not allowing it. So even though I've got a lot of pressure from behind, I'm still not going to make risky moves to try to get around somebody. I get a nice clean run through here, which enables me to get by that car, and he gets stymied by it.
He likes to go left there.
He really likes to go left. I don't know why. And then I get around a clean pass on another car and put another car between him and I. So he has to sacrifice his exit. And then at this point, every car that I can get around safely and put between me and him leaves more gap. Now I got a little bit stymied there, so he caught right back up, but I'm in the right spot for this corner. He's not. He's trying to drive around the outside, which is very difficult. And we got a little bit of a gap again. And so just because you have that pressure from behind doesn't mean you have to now start taking risk. It just means that you can still be patient, but make sure you put your car in a spot where he can't, take advantage of it. But I'm not taking any unreasonable risk with him on my bumper. I'm being smart about it, and just keeping my car underneath him. And that's probably why his tires fell off, frankly, throughout the race. So yeah, Jim, I hope that helps, or at least answers what you were talking about.
Yeah, no. It's totally on point. I think the Summer Tour Series is fantastic for people learning how to do multi-class, and I love the fact that they have the option of getting into a different car and experience it from a different way. I think multi-class racing teaches you to be more patient, more focused, more attentive to what you're telling other drivers with your car and how you can read other cars. I think it makes you a much better driver overall.
Absolutely. Anybody can go out there and hot lap and go do qualifying, but when you've got a car that is on the apex that you need to get around, that's what shows the really good adaptable drivers versus the ones that just have to drive the line, and if they're not driving the line, they don't know where they're at. You'll become a better driver if you do multi-class for sure. And you'll be a better endurance driver. I mean, that's all endurance racing is multi-class at this point. So embrace it, love it, and it's a lot of fun. What about Johan or Robbie? You guys have any questions?
No, I'm good. A lot of the chatter on Discord is about the faster cars taking lots of risks. And I guess the slower cars feeling like they can't do much about it.
Yeah, but the truth is the slower cars, in my mind, the slower cars have all the control. Ultimately they are at the mercy of the faster cars, sending it in or ultimately instigating the pass, so to speak. But the slower car, as I demonstrated on the other replay, can control where the pass is going to happen to some extent, and so they can protect an entry if they don't want to get passed into an entry point. Little things like they can lift off when a pass is coming to make sure the pass gets completed before a turn-in spot. The slower car has a lot of control. I think where people tend to get in some trouble is when the slower car puts blinders on and basically says, okay, if I just drive my line and drive like nobody else is on the track, if I get hit or something happens, it's not my fault. I drove my line and I did what I was supposed to do. And the reality is yeah, you can drive your line, but you have to help out the other cars, or else you're not going to have a good time. And so that's kind of the biggest takeaway is find a place to make it easy on them. If you don't want to be passed, don't make it inviting. And yeah, work together and work as co-drivers or co-competitors as opposed to, enemies. The other thing I'll say, just as a caveat in terms of, protecting going into a corner from a faster car that's not in your class, you can get away with it for like one corner, maybe two if it's a complex of corners, like an S. But after that, don't keep using that as a tool to delay the pass, because that's just going to lead to frustration, which is going to lead to the faster car making a move that is low risk or high risk to try to get by you. So I say it if it's just like there's no other option and you just really don't want to get past going onto an entry point, because that you're going to start your turn in before they even get alongside you. So you take it defensive to discourage them from doing that. But don't do it on the next corner or the corner after that, because they're going to get frustrated and they're going to send it at some point, and that's where people tend to end up getting caught out. So but yeah, no, it's a good point and good chatter. It's both people's responsibility to make it work. It's not just one side or the other, even though we may hear the otherwise. So all right, well, that's all I had, and we made it an hour, believe it or not. So I thank you guys for coming. I know it was relatively short notice. I will start to have these more, especially as the new season comes along. I'll also have a couple more classrooms before the 24 as well, including a track walk for Le Mans. I don't know what car I'm going to do it in. I might just do my car. And if you're a different class, you'll just have to adapt it to your car, but it's not too different. And then if you're not signed up for the 24 Hours of Le Mans for the PCA Sim Racing, you should definitely consider it. It is going to be a fun race. I think there's currently 36 entries, which is fantastic. It's for charity as well. So remember that even if you're not racing, you can always donate for the charity. And Jim, do you know who the charity is this year? Is it still Operation Motorsport?
I don't know. You'd have to ask Doug, who are our official on it. I know there's an entry fee to help pay for broadcasting and so forth this year.
So it is always done as a charity event. So in the past, it's been Operation Motorsport. So I would be inclined to think it's the same folks. Regardless, if it's not for Operation Motorsport, those guys are fantastic. Definitely look into them. But whatever charity it is, definitely deserves our patronage as much as we can. So even if you're not racing, I invite you guys to turn into the broadcast and donate if you are able and willing. And but more importantly, if you can drive, find a team. Come drive for 24 hours. There's nothing quite like a 24-hour race, let alone driving at Le Mans. It's kind of the dream of all race car drivers, right? And the fact that we can even get a hint of what that's actually like in the virtual world is just phenomenal. So I definitely invite you guys to try it out. But yeah, other than that, good luck with the team races as they come on, and yeah, stay tuned. We'll try to do more and more of these classrooms with a little bit more regularity. So thanks guys, I appreciate you guys attending.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.